Welcome back to the Untold Stories of Irish Adoption. Growing up, the only other person I knew aside from me who was adopted was my brother. While I'd be open with everyone I met about my adoption and be happy to talk to anyone about it, I never felt like I had anyone to relate to when it came to that part of my life. The moment I decided on adoption as the topic for this podcast, I knew I wanted to reach out to other adoptees and hear their stories and experiences. I posted on Twitter and Instagram saying I was looking for Irish adoptees to interview, and within a matter of minutes I had people messaging me saying they'd be interested. It was refreshing to hear about people who'd experienced a similar situation to me, and also interesting to hear the differences in our stories. My first interviewee was a woman named Saoirse from Meath. What really caught my attention about Saoirse's story was that she has letters from her birth mother, including a poem and photos, along with records from where she was adopted.
The first one is when she was 17, kind of, so it was just about like what her interests were and like what she was doing with herself at the time, and kind of about like meeting my father and that they were like going out basically. And she told him she was pregnant that he like broke up with her. Like I've got like records. There's like the notes and stuff from the convent or whatever it was. Like the mother and father, like physical descriptions. Mother, 17 years, height 5'2". She's the height that I am as well. We have same colour eyes, unemployed, then like hobbies. And there's like pictures of me as a baby, like before I was adopted. And there's like a poem she wrote and all.
Since Saoirse has so much information on her birth mother, I asked would she be interested in trying to find her. She told me her birth mother had actually attempted to find her already.
She reached out to a social worker because she wanted to meet me. And she asked us to send a picture of me. When I was like 21, I sent like a picture of my 21st birthday. And then like a few years ago, like 2 years ago, I think, I met with the social worker who had also knows her to kind of talk about it. But then obviously the pandemic happened and everything, so...
While the pandemic put a hindrance on this process for Saoirse, it brought an opportunity for another one of my interviewees, who was adopted from Romania into Ireland. When looking into adoption back in the late 80s, her parents decided they wanted to do a foreign adoption and reached out to a social worker to help them with the process.
And the social worker said in Romania there's going to be a lot of children up for adoption because there was a dictator who basically sucked all of the wealth out of the country, kept it for himself, banned contraception, and so people were having these huge families that they couldn't support. And so there was this big surge when he was thrown out of power in 1989. So that's why there's this big generation of all of us in 1990 and 89 from Romania, because suddenly the gates were open and foreign adoption was allowed, because before this you couldn't adopt a child unless you lived in Romania, no? And there was a lot on TV at the time about the orphanages there and stuff, so my parents kind of felt, we can really help a child if they're from Romania, so that's why they chose there. My parents were over there for like a month or two because they had to go through the process of visiting different babies that they thought that they could be matched with and then seeing which one they would go with, and that meant traveling all around Romania. Like they were in the capital. My dad then had to travel to some random town somewhere back and forth for solicitors, for translators. So it took a really long time to get everything ready. Mm-hmm. And then when they were there, it was not a straightforward process, especially given like it was just a country that was in ruins, like so much poverty, and they were going over, didn't speak any Romanian, no one spoke English, so that also took a while.
During quarantine, with the increased amount of spare time, this interviewee decided she wanted to put her time to good use and find her birth family. She had access to information such as her family name and the town she was originally from, so with the help of a Facebook page that aids in the process of Romanian adoptees finding their birth family, she discovered her birth mother, siblings and niece were living in England.
I actually found them in April, and I found them within a week. So I got to video chat with her. And say, and the two of us, like, I have pictures, like screenshots of the call, because the two of us just like obviously had like really ugly crying faces and we're like, oh my gosh. And yeah, we both got a chance to say what we wanted to say, and then they were like, okay, now we're going to introduce you to your sister, and then they turned my mom's camera off, and they were very well organized. They had it all laid out so that like everyone knew their order coming on. They had a translator just in case, and so one by one we got to chat and say how crazy it was, and my mom was like I can die happy. Like, I went to sleep hoping, like, praying to God that you were okay.
While she was fortunate enough to find her birth mother, and Saoirse's journey is looking promising, others are finding it difficult to track down their birth parents due to lack of information. I spoke with Aoife, a student from Stamullen, about this. After gathering all the information she had and attempting to reach out for help, Aoife heard nothing back, which resulted in a lot of frustration and realisation for her.
Once I put my information in, I heard nothing back, and then I called them. I called what I thought was an agency, but then they sent me to like different, like Dublin, Leinster, stuff like that. And finally I got a reply, and the reply was like, no, there's nothing on the register. It could be 2 years. It could be a couple of months, which is really, frustrating. I just think that the information should always be there. It doesn't even have to be a thing of like giving them their names, but just full medical history and stuff like that, so that if anything ever comes up, the kid like can look into it. And it should just be as simple as like them ticking a box saying, in 18 years, I'd like a letter with my information to be sent. I don't know why it's so difficult. I mean, luckily I don't have any medical issues at the moment, but like growing up, the first question you're asked when you go to the doctors is like, do you have a history of X, Y, and Z in your family? So not having any knowledge about like any genetic conditions and stuff like that, it's scary, like, especially, if something did happen. For example, my friend, the women in her mom's side of the family all have a history of like endometriosis. So she knew early on, like, go on the pill early, like preventative stuff that doesn't get really bad. I obviously don't have that knowledge, which is really frustrating. There's so much to be done for like the biological parents. Like, there's so much consideration, like, for them, like, as it should be. I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but like, they're allowed to be secret, they're allowed their privacy. I think like adoptive children should be given more autonomy. Like, we're not just being handed over, we're adults now. Like, we're teenagers and adults who have our own lives, and we're entitled to know like where we came from.
Aoife's frustration with the system in this country is understandable, from the point of view of an adoptee who's in the same boat as her, just like me. While we have to go through the strenuous and often disappointing process of tracking down our birth parents, some people are raised with their birth parents in their lives. I spoke with a woman from Offaly who told me a story like no other. Her birth parents were only teenagers when they put her up for adoption.
They were 16, 17 in school and got pregnant, and they decided that they were going to put me up for adoption, but their parents to this day still don't know about me. But they went somewhere in the UK. Their families thought they were just going away for the summer and coming back, and my birth father was, because he did transition year, he was going into 6th year, and my birth mother was starting college in September, and I was born on the 29th of August. And then social workers from Ireland came over and took me back. So my birth parents met my parents, and they got to choose who adopted me. Even now, I remember speaking to my birth father recently about it, and she was saying, like, oh, I thought they were so old, but they were in their early 30s, because he was only 17.
A mutual decision was made between her birth parents and her parents for her to have contact with her birth parents throughout her life, something which her mother was always very supportive of.
Like, my mum, she really wanted me to have contact with my birth parents. Like, she would encourage us, because I know sometimes when I tell people that, they're like, she was not threatened by the idea of you, like, going to meet your birth parents. But for me, it was always, I've always known I was adopted. So, like, I don't see my birth parents as my parents.
I also spoke with Carla, a student from Carlow who had an open adoption with her twin sister, where they see their birth mother and her family 3 times a year.
I have a twin sister, and ours is very, very strange. It's not many that do this, but since we've been babies, we've seen our birth mother like 3 times a year. So our birthday, which is August, and Christmas and Easter time, and we don't just see her, we see our grandmother, like our birth mother's mother, and her sister as well, so our auntie. I think it was an agreement between my parents now and her. I'm not really sure how it actually went down, but yeah, I think it was both wanted, both involved, like.
The interview process was so interesting to me, as although all of these girls have completely different stories, we're all connected in many ways. Now that their stories have been heard, I'll be diving deeper into their treatment throughout life as adoptees, the reactions to their adoptions, and how the mother and baby home scandal has left its mark on Irish adoption. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for more of the untold stories of Irish adoption.